So I'm really honored today to be presenting Her Royal Highness Princess Rym Ali today, to be gracing us again with her thoughts and her words. And the floor is all yours. Thank you very much.
Anna Rita, if you can allow me for 1 second, I just wanted to greet Her Royal Highness Princess Rym Ali, and she's a wonderful sister, she's a wonderful daughter, wonderful wife, wonderful activist, wonderful person, and I am so blessed to work with her, and her husband, great guy, Prince Ali. They have hosted the Laureates and Leaders for Children in Jordan, and that was one of the best experience many of us had in our life. Thank you so much for your compassion and love and caring for children of the world, Princess. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kailash ji. It is such a pleasure and actually a real honor to be here with you, and thank you. I mean, I think that Laureates and Leaders will be unforgettable mainly by everything that you've done. You are indeed one of the young people, and you are, you know, amazing with all the work that you do. So it's truly a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much, Rita, for your very kind words as well. Your Excellency, Mr. President Ramos Horta, Professor John Volmic, Kailash ji, Dr. Rui Marquez, Monica Rochaimelo, Moses, and Rita, dear delegates and dear friends. Well, that's the thing, you see, to take the floor after someone like Kailash is very risky business, because he sets the bar so high, not only in what he says, but in everything that he does. He really is the change that we want to see. But let me add my voice to that of our president and to Professor John Volmink as well, and thank Kailash very warmly for accepting to join us today and speak to our audience and bring us more hope. The 4 pillars of Ubuntu that you mentioned are definitely a good compass to go by. And especially thank you, Kailash, for the very valuable work you do in protecting children's rights in India and the world. Mindful, of course, of the fact that children's rights are the starting point when we talk about human rights, reminding us that a child is a human being with rights and dignity, and how important they are for our future. In fact, of course, you all know here that the children's rights were recognized after First World War with the Geneva Declaration in 1924, and then later in 1959 with the Declaration of the Rights of the Child. You saw the video that was there introducing Mr. Satyarthi's speech. There are more than 160 million child laborers in the world. And maybe if you don't mind, since we're coming up to the festive season for part of the world, no matter how or what you celebrate actually, maybe I can start with a small reminder just to emphasize why Kailash's work is so crucial. And it goes back to what he was saying about political will, the role of businesses, the greediness of employers, the $40 billion that can help educate children, lift them out of poverty. I think some of you may be familiar with A Christmas Carol, the book that was written by Charles Dickens, and he often denounced the dire situation of children in Victorian England. It is in fact a universal story. There is a part where the main character Scrooge meets the ghost of Christmas future, and he shows these 2 wild, ragged children coming out of his robes. And the ghost tells Scrooge they are man's. The boy is called ignorance, and the girl is called want. Beware of them both and of all their degree, he is told. What Kailash Satyarthi does, what the laureates and leaders and the eminent board of men and women who work with him do, is precisely that. He's working hard to make sure there are no children called ignorance or want, so that the future of all is not compromised, and to make sure that the basic rights of children, which are basic human rights, are respected. And maybe a bit like Dickens in his time, or maybe more powerfully, because he actually acts on it to remind us of the importance of compassion, and remember that the solutions are interconnected. So what else remains to be said about Ubuntu and human rights? Maybe the following. In a few days' time, on the 10th of December, the world will celebrate the anniversary of the Declaration of Human Rights adopted by the United Nations in Paris in 1948. That was just 3 years after the end of the devastating World War II. Our young participants here would enjoy rereading maybe the text of that declaration. It's also worth reading the Constitution of the United States of 1776, and the Declaration of Human Rights and the Citizen, la Déclaration des droits de l'homme et du citoyen, that dates from the beginning of the French Revolution in 1789. Now, both texts were important sources for the Declaration of Human Rights of 1948. But of course, we can't ignore that the American Constitution was drafted by slave owners, that racist practices have not disappeared in the US even today, and that at the time the French colonial enterprise often tried to remind the world that the motherland of human rights couldn't possibly be accused of abuse of human rights. Today, as President Ramos Horta pointed out, there are many reasons to be satisfied of the progress achieved worldwide and to have hope. But questions need to be asked. COVID-19 is showing that the right of the individual is becoming an exclusive absolute in some places. And in the view of some people, the popular saying, the freedom of one man stops where that of another man begins, seem to have been forgotten these days. You are all, I am sure, aware how some people refuse to wear a mask, even if that puts other people in danger. Some people refuse to be vaccinated because it is their right to refuse, disregarding completely the right of their neighbor not to be contaminated. The same goes with freedom of speech, and our connected social media world is rife with examples. Freedom of speech is a basic fundamental human right, but it does not give anyone the right to tell lies. It sounds obvious, but it's important to remember, because you'll also remember that someone speaking on behalf of President Trump then famously said that lies were actually alternative realities. That is not a fact, of course. Just as importantly, individual rights come with duties. Everyone should be encouraged to act responsibly, because society cannot possibly function if we all decide that we have every right but not duty. In Asia, I think it is often said that what Westerners call international values are actually Western values. Asians, they say, consider that individual rights cannot go without duties to the family. They speak of family values, for example. Now, I mentioned this in a previous intervention, but I think it's worth mentioning here again, if you don't mind. The Organization of African Unity adopted in 1980 the Charter of Human and People's Rights. Now, that text is far from being perfect, and in some countries on the continent, neither human nor people's rights are fully enjoyed by everyone, sadly. But I believe Africans are fully justified in demanding that the individual cannot really enjoy liberty and personal rights if collective rights are not fully recognized and respected. I'm not certain that members of the OAU actually spoke of Ubuntu specifically during the drafting phase of their charter, but it is certain that the spirit of Ubuntu permeates important parts of that African Charter of Human Rights and People's Rights. It reflects the notion that a code of conduct for humans needs to be a code of conduct for their coexistence. We must use our imagination to jump over brick walls, President Ramos Horta said, and we must use our hearts and our brains. And as Kailash Satyarthi says, we still should consider other people's children as our children. Ubuntu tells us that human beings do not stand alone on this earth. Each one is part of a family. He or she is a member of a community, a citizen, or a country, a member of the human race. They have rights within the family, to the community, the country, and within humankind. But he or she has duties to the family, to the community, to the country, and to the human race. As far back as the mid-Renaissance period, the English poet and scholar John Donne wrote a poem called "No Man is an Island," which expresses that link of man with humankind, which seems to have been forgotten recently. No man is an island entire of itself, he writes. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. Europe is the less, as well as if a promontory were, as well as any manner of thy friends or of thine own were. Any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind, and therefore never sent to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. As we are called to do our part to help curb this pandemic, it is worth remembering that our rights as human beings within communities, and that each one of us exists through the others. As John Volmick said, evoking Nelson Mandela, it is up to us all, and up to all of you here today, to make sure we're remembered as the generation that did the right thing. Thank you.